Death is one of the most feared and mysterious rites of passage. It's a reality we all must face one day, a bridge between this life and another realm of existence where the soul and spirit continue in a different form. To transition to that realm, one must pass through death. This principle is clearly stated in Hebrews 9:27. It is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. It seems unchangeable. Once you die, that's it. But what if I told you that some individuals broke this rule? Not only did they die, but they died twice. Who were these extraordinary individuals? Why were they allowed to experience death a second time? What lessons can we learn from their unusual journeys? Picture this. Life fades, the heart stops beating, the blood ceases to flow, the eyes capture their final glimpse of the world, and the nostrils take one last breath. Death settles in, and the mourners begin to grieve. Then, in a miraculous twist, a presence, a touch of divine power, reawakens the lifeless. The heart beats once more, blood courses through the veins, and breath fills the lungs anew. Life has returned. They are not phantoms or spirits. They rise as flesh and blood, real and whole, destined to walk this earth once more, able to live, to love, and indeed, to die again. This is not a folk tale. It is a reality that happened many years ago. Stay tuned till the end. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section. We will uncover the mystery and bring it to light for your understanding. Number 1. Lazarus. The Bible does not tell us much about Lazarus of Bethany life. What we know is that he was a close friend of Jesus and the beloved brother of Mary and Martha. Bethany, a calm and peaceful town, became a place of refuge for Jesus, a home away from home where he could rest from the pressing crowds and relentless demands of his ministry. Every time he came, Mary and Martha welcomed him with warmth and love, and he found solace under their roof. One day, Lazarus fell gravely ill. Knowing Jesus could heal him, Mary and Martha sent for their friend, hoping he would come in time. But the days passed, and Lazarus succumbed to his illness. Bethany was swept up in sorrow, and their home was filled with the sounds of grief and mourning. Yet, even in their deepest despair, Mary and Martha held onto a sliver of hope. They believed that Jesus, their friend and healer, would come, and somehow things would change. When Jesus finally arrived in Bethany, Martha ran to meet him. Her heart was torn between her grief and her enduring faith. "Lord," she said, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus, touched by her words and her pain, responded with a promise that went beyond her understanding. "Your brother will rise again." Then they went to the tomb where Lazarus lay. Jesus wept. It was a deeply human, vulnerable moment, showing just how profoundly he loved Lazarus and how he felt the sting of death's finality. But as they reached the tomb, Jesus' sorrow gave way to a powerful purpose. He commanded that the stone be rolled away, and with a voice full of authority he cried, "Lazarus, come forth!" To everyone's astonishment, Lazarus emerged from the tomb, still wrapped in burial cloths but alive and well. The crowd looked on in awe and joy, and many came to believe in Jesus because of this miracle. Through Lazarus' resurrection, Jesus revealed the depth of his love and the incredible hope he brings, even in life's darkest moments. Number 2, Eutychus. Picture this, a young man, eager to hear the words of one of the greatest apostles, sitting among the faithful in an upper room. It was a rare opportunity to listen to a servant of God, whose message carried strength and conviction. This is the case of Eutychus. Eutychus was a young man living in the city of Troas, where the Apostle Paul was visiting and teaching. On the first day of the week, as the believers gathered in an upper room to break bread and hear Paul preach, Paul continued speaking late into the night. Eutychus was seated by a window as Paul's teaching extended into the early hours of the morning. Exhausted, Eutychus began to drift off to sleep until, finally, he fell into a deep slumber and toppled out of the third-story window, falling to the ground below. When the people rushed down, they found him lying dead. Paul went down to where Eutychus lay, placed his arms around him and reassured the crowd, saying, "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." Acts 20:10. Through Paul, God miraculously restored Eutychus to life. The believers returned to the upper room, where they shared in a meal and continued in fellowship until morning. Number 3. Tabitha. Tabitha of Joppa was woman with a heart as strong as steel, whose kindness flowed like an unstoppable river. From the moment she stepped into the world, she was destined to touch lives in ways that few could imagine. Tabitha's strength wasn't in physical power, but in her unwavering commitment to care for others. She was a beacon of generosity, always ready to offer her help, whether it was sewing clothes for the poor or comforting the widows who had nothing left. Her kindness was her vow, a sacred promise she made to live her life for others, no matter the cost. Just as a man's strength can be his downfall if he betrays his vow, Tabitha's kindness could never be taken lightly. It was the foundation of her being, her identity, a source of life for everyone around her. She gave freely, not expecting anything in return, and her actions spoke louder than words. Tabitha fell ill and passed away. The disciples in Joppa, deeply saddened by her death, sent 2 men to find the Apostle Peter, who was in a nearby town called Lydda. They hoped that Peter might be able to help. When Peter arrived, he was taken to the room where Tabitha's body was laid. All the widows stood around him, weeping and showing him the tunics and other clothing that Tabitha had made for them. Moved by their sorrow and the great love they had for her, Peter sent everyone out of the room and knelt down to pray. After praying, Peter turned to the body and said, "Tabitha, get up." To the astonishment of all, Tabitha opened her eyes, sat up, and looked at Peter. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. Peter called the believers and widows back in, and they saw Tabitha alive, and they were filled with joy and amazement. Number 4. Son of the widow of Zarephath. During a time of severe drought and famine, God instructed Prophet Elijah to go to a town called Zarephath, which was located in the region of Sidon. There God told him he would find a widow who would provide for him. However, while Elijah was there, tragedy struck when the widow's son fell ill and died. Distraught, she confronted Elijah, accusing him of bringing judgment upon her and her son. Elijah, filled with compassion, took the boy from her arms and carried him to the upper room where he was staying. He laid the child on his bed, cried out to God, and asked the Lord to restore the boy's life. Elijah stretched himself out over the child 3 times, praying fervently for God to return his soul to him. God heard Elijah's prayer, and the boy's life was restored. Elijah carried the boy back to his mother and declared, "See, your son is alive." The widow, amazed by this miracle, declared her faith in Elijah and in the God he served, saying, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." Number 5. Shunammite woman's son. A wealthy woman in Shunem had shown kindness to the prophet Elisha, and in return Elisha promised her a son, even though she had been unable to have children. She gave birth to a son, but one day, as he grew older, he suddenly fell ill and died in her arms. Instead of mourning in the usual way, she placed her son's body on Elisha's bed and set out to find the prophet. When she reached Elisha, she pleaded for his help. Elisha sent his servant ahead to lay his staff on the boy's body, but the woman insisted that Elisha himself come. When Elisha arrived, he prayed to God and stretched himself out over the boy 3 times. The boy's body became warm, and after sneezing 7 times, he came back to life. Elisha called the woman, and she joyfully took her son back, praising God for the miracle. Number 6. A man who was thrown onto Elisha's bones. After Elisha's death, his bones were laid in a tomb. One day, some Israelites were burying a man when they saw a band of Moabite raiders approaching. In a hurry to escape, they quickly threw the dead man's body into Elisha's tomb. As soon as the man's body touched Elisha's bones, he came to life and stood up on his feet. This demonstrated the power of the Lord that was present in Elisha's body. Even in his tomb, he was able to perform miracles. This shows how God works through those he has chosen. Even when they are at their lowest ebb, God can still use them. Number 7, son of the widow of Nain. Jesus and his disciples were traveling to the town of Nain. As they approached the town gate, they encountered a funeral procession. The widow of Nain, whose only son had died, was leading the procession. The woman was deeply sorrowful, having lost not only her son, but also her husband, leaving her with no family or support. When Jesus saw her, he was filled with compassion. He approached the woman and said, "Don't cry." Then he went up to the bier, the platform on which the dead body was placed, and touched it. Those carrying the bier stopped, and Jesus said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." Immediately the dead man sat up and began to speak. Jesus then gave him back to his mother. The crowd was filled with awe and wonder, praising God. They said, "A great prophet has appeared among us, and God has come to help his people." The news about this miracle spread throughout Judea and the surrounding areas, and many were amazed by the power of Jesus to raise the dead. Number 8, Yrus's daughter. Yrus was a synagogue leader, a respected man in his community. His daughter, who was around 12 years old, fell critically ill. Desperate to save her, Yrus went to find Jesus. He fell at Jesus' feet, begging him to come and heal his daughter. Jesus agreed to go with Yrus. People came from Yrus' house with the tragic news that his daughter had died. They told Yrus, "Why bother the teacher anymore?" But when Jesus heard this, he told Yrus, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Jesus continued to the house, and when he arrived, he found a crowd of people mourning and weeping. Jesus told them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep." They laughed at him, knowing the girl was truly dead. But Jesus took Yrus and his wife into the room where the girl lay, along with his disciples, Peter, James, and John. He took the girl by the hand and said, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. The people were astonished, and Jesus told them not to tell anyone what had happened. He also instructed them to give the girl something to eat. Number 9, Saints of Jerusalem. When Jesus died on the cross, there was a great earthquake, and the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. At that moment, many tombs broke open, and the bodies of many saints, holy people, who had died were resurrected. These saints came back to life, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city, Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. The story is mysterious and not elaborated upon much in the Bible, so it has been a subject of various interpretations and discussions. Some see it as a powerful sign of Jesus' victory over death, confirming his divine authority. The raising of these saints is sometimes viewed as a foretaste of the resurrection that will happen at the end of time for all believers. Number 10, Jesus. After Jesus was sentenced to death by crucifixion, he was nailed to the cross and died around 3 p.m. on a Friday, which is now known as Good Friday. His body was taken down and placed in a tomb, which was a new tomb owned by a man named Joseph of Arimathea. A large stone was rolled in front of the tomb's entrance, and Roman soldiers were posted to guard it to prevent anyone from stealing the body. On the third day after Jesus' death, early on the morning of Sunday, now celebrated as Easter, something miraculous happened. A great earthquake occurred, and an angel of the Lord descended from heaven. The angel rolled away the stone from the tomb's entrance, and the guards were so afraid that they fell unconscious. When Mary Magdalene and other women went to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body with spices, they discovered that the stone had been rolled away and the tomb was empty. At first, they were confused and worried that someone had taken Jesus' body. However, an angel appeared to them and announced, "He is not here. He has risen just as he said." Matthew 28:6. The angel told the women to go quickly and tell the disciples that Jesus had risen from the dead, and was going ahead of them to Galilee. After his resurrection, Jesus appeared to his disciples and many others over a period of 40 days, teaching them about the kingdom of God. In Acts 1:3, it says he gave them many convincing proofs that he was alive. One of the final appearances was on a mountain in Galilee, where he gave the Great Commission instructing his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. In the glorious second coming of Jesus, a moment of unimaginable power and grace, all believers who have passed will rise again. This is the resurrection of the dead, the final resurrection, a promise of eternal life for all who have remained faithful. On that day, death will be conquered forever, and those who have trusted in God will be transformed and brought into everlasting glory with him. Thank you so much for tuning in throughout this powerful message. If you've been moved by this truth, don't forget to like and subscribe. Drop your thoughts and reflections in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your views. We salute you.